If you have a penis, wearing a dress does not make you a woman. If you have a penis, putting on lipstick does not make you a woman. If you have a penis, I don't really care what your preferred pronouns are. You are a biological male, distinct from my mother and my sisters. Now, you can be feminine, that's fine. You can be a man who likes wearing dresses, that's fine too. But you are not the same and ought not be treated the same as biological females. Now, is that hate speech? Some would say yes, some would say no. And that is the focus of today's episode. Is rejecting someone's preferred pronouns hate speech, and should it be illegal? Let's start by finding some common ground. Should we place some, if any, limit on what people can and cannot say? There are some free speech absolutists who'll say no to this question, and fair enough, but most people say yes, some limits are appropriate or reasonable when given the specific example of inciting violence. And this is based on the premise that we ought to, where possible, resolve conflict via non-violent means. But what about defamation? If someone is making provably false statements about you to ruin your reputation, should that be illegal? Again, most people say a pretty solid yes here. We don't want the powerful abusing their power to unfairly ruin someone's reputation or life. Say, for example, if a particular media outlet decided that they didn't like you and chose to spread provably false statements about your behavior or conduct, most people think that that ought to be disincentivized or prohibited by law. So far, inciting violence, check. Defamation, check. Most people find common ground on them. But now what about hate speech? And this is where we begin to see the divide. Should hate speech be illegal? Now, as many of you may already be thinking, or you may feel in your gut, there is a problem here. And that number one problem is, what exactly is hate speech and who gets to define it? Because here is the key. Whoever gets to define it, whoever defined what qualifies as sufficiently hateful, whoever defines what exactly is hate speech, they now have control over what you and I can say. If it's sufficiently hateful in their eyes, it's illegal. But who is they? Who are the ones in control here? Who are the ones that control our tongues? Is it the big dogs up the top, the strong and the powerful? Because this is what people usually think of when they think of the classic tyrant. The classic tyrant, they come in and they say, speak out against me, and in the name of protecting my power and my rule, you will be censored and silenced. Undermine me and I will come for you. Now, this kind of tyrant, easy to spot. But here is the problem. The modern tyrant, they know this. The modern tyrant, they're smart, cunning, more subtle than their classic tyrant counterparts. They are careful with their branding. For the modern tyrant is the professional victim, the suspiciously proud and exuberant he, she, they, zer, gay, black, neurodiverse, body positive individual that self-identifies as weak, vulnerable, and fundamentally at risk and oppressed by those goddamn bigots, aka usually anyone more successful than them. Now, these professional victims, they recruit the oftentimes well-intentioned but overly compassionate, unthinking enablers who are desperate for a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives, desperate to signal at the first opportunity they get, I am the most virtuous and woke of them all, or please, I swear I'm a goodie, an ally, not one of those bigots. So don't hurt me and my family. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll say whatever you want me to say. Men can be women, check. Males are villains, check. White privilege, say less. A bit of melanin, oppressed. The modern tyrant appropriates genuine victimhood. They use the I am a victim branding as costume, sheep's clothing, to try and make moral what would otherwise be obviously immoral, tyrant-like, antisocial behavior in need of reining in. If I say something you disagree with and you want to shut me up, you want to silence the opposition to your ideas, and you go to the police and you say, I'm outraged, I'm offended, shut him up, you won't get anywhere. They'll see you for what you are, a classic tyrant in need of, fundamentally, socialization. But here is the key. 101 from the Modern Tyrant's Handbook. If I say something you disagree with, and you want to shut me up, you want to silence the opposition to your ideas, but you now go to the police and say, I'm the victim, I'm unsafe, I'm in danger, his ideas are dangerous and harmful to me and my community, him saying what he believes, him asking his questions, that is killing people. Boom. The unthinking, undiscerning enablers of the modern tyrant, of the professional victim, they come running in and they ask, where is the victim? Where are the dangerous and harmful bigots? AKA people who say things they don't like. So eyes open, ladies and gentlemen. The new age tyrant is the professional victim. Now, another piece of advice from the Modern Tyrant's Handbook: the more victim points, the more successful you are in these oppression Olympics, the more power you have over what other people can and cannot say. If I, a white, heterosexual, moderately successful male, were to complain about you saying something I disagree with, I feel unsafe, the police will say, grow up, buddy, and rightly so. But if I put a dress on, if I put some makeup on, and then I act unhinged and unthinkably entitled, unoppressed and discriminated against trans women, if I then complain about you saying something I disagree with, but I don't say what I said before, and instead I say, I am the victim, I feel unsafe, the police come running in, the universities come running in, the HR departments come running in, and they will say, where is the bigot? Let's get him. The takeaway here: we have set up a system as a culture wherein the more outraged and oppressed you are, the more power you have. As a consequence, we as a culture are squandering latent potential and instead incentivizing victimhood and the creation of, the breeding of antisocial modern tyrants wearing sheep's clothes, appropriated victimhood, all made possible by, drumroll, the enablers, the undiscerning, overly compassionate types, obsessed with inclusion, possessed by the movement, afraid of the questions and dissent because at base, that threatens their source of meaning and fulfillment. Remove the victim and there's no need for the savior. By saying, you know what, maybe they're not victims in need of saving and protection, maybe they're just antisocial tyrants that you're enabling, you risk removing the enabler's source of meaning and fulfillment. The fundamental problem here is unrestrained, undiscerning compassion. Now notice also here the feminine tinge. I wonder, perhaps you should also, what happens if motherhood is not glorified and celebrated and honored as the ultimate ideal for women? If instead it's all about advancing one's career, the patriarchy. What happens to the compassion instinct? It doesn't just disappear. Perhaps it looks for those in need of help, victims. Perhaps so much so that it creates them. Help, I need protecting, to which the feminine instinct might say, I'll be right there to protect you. Who is in danger? Who is the harmful? Who is the bad guy threatening the weak and vulnerable baby? We hear a lot about toxic masculinity, but it's this female typical, feminine over compassion, this unsophisticated, undiscerning compassion that says anything in the name of protecting the vulnerable. It's this toxic femininity that enables professional victims and the modern tyrant. Now, a quick disclaimer here. Feminine does not mean that it's only in women. Men are also becoming feminized, and that might actually be a part of the problem. If it's the feminine that says, it's okay, my dear, you are safe here, what are you feeling and who has hurt your feelings? It's the masculine that says, get out there and toughen up, kiddo. It doesn't matter how you feel, I won't accept excuses. You are stronger and more capable than what you might think. And we need the harmony of both. An imbalance brings with it either censorship of dissent in the name of preserving the powerful's existing power, toxic masculine we might say, or the imbalance brings with it censorship in the name of protecting the weak and vulnerable self-identified victims, the toxic feminine. More on that in future episodes. So now, back to pronouns. Is it hate speech to reject someone's preferred pronouns? Well, firstly, what exactly do the pronouns mean? When this biological male says, my pronouns are she, her, what is he really saying? And what are you agreeing to if you go along with the she, her? Is it just a simple and innocent request to make him feel more comfortable with his gender dysphoria? Maybe, but unlikely. And you kind of know this already. That's why your gut is uneasy with it. Because instead of being that innocent and polite request, it's more so an implicit demand, an order, a threat, to nod along and say yes. Yes, you are fundamentally the same as my mother and my sisters and my wife and my daughters. Yes, you are whatever you say you are and I will treat you as such. Yes, 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 just please don't call me a bigot. The preferred pronouns are an implicit threat. Swear your allegiance to the rainbow and all the degeneracy that goes along with it, or I will attempt to ruin your reputation by tarring and feathering you as a bigot. It's a threat to make you comply and hold your tongue, to do as you are told, you good little slave. Again, A slave to who here? Who is the tyrant? The modern tyrant. It is the professional victim. And so, it is a no from me. I will not be using your preferred pronouns unless I know exactly what they mean. If we're on the same page, you have gender dysphoria. You're simply asking me to make you feel more comfortable with your mental issue by saying she, her, maybe I'll consider. Which is why with someone like Buck Angel, I don't have an issue currently with saying he, him. But if you're implicitly wanting me to collapse categories in the name of inclusion, to say that you, a biological male with a mental illness / personality disorder, are the same as my mother, again, it's a no from me. Now, is that hateful? Depends what you mean by hate. If hate means me saying to this biological male in a dress, no, you cannot use the same change rooms as my mother and sisters and future wife and daughters, then maybe in some people's eyes, it does count as hateful. But I would say it comes from a deep-seated place of none other than love. For if I love someone, I don't enable their delusion. If I love someone, I don't enable their narcissism. If I love someone, I don't enable their antisocial behavior. I don't enable their victim mentality. I don't enable their pathological entitlement. If I love someone, I don't let them become the modern tyrant. My rejecting your preferred pronouns, it's not hate speech. If anything, it's love speech. And it absolutely should not be deemed illegal based on how much offense these power-hungry professional victims take. For that does nothing but enable, incentivize, and embolden the modern tyrant. So in closing, you know the boundaries of political correctness are creeping in. The politically correct PC matrix is increasingly limiting what you and I can and cannot say. And as it gets tighter and tighter, if it is to stop, there must be a resisting force. And that force isn't magic. It doesn't just happen. It isn't going to come out of nowhere. That resisting force, it's you and me, the individual willing to say no to the tyrant. Whether they identify as the victim, trans, gay, black, this, that, the other, or not. It is up to us, because if we do not do it, if we say, nah, someone else will take care of it, and everyone abdicates responsibility, your and my responsibility as caretaker of the culture, then to put it bluntly, we are all will not only be a disappointment to our forebears and everything they sacrificed for us, but we will also be a disappointment to our future generations when they live under a tyranny that doesn't let them say men and women are different, and such language is outlawed as hate speech. You will be the one to blame. So let's go. Enough holding your tongue, enough being polite and appeasing professional victims and their enablers like Karen from HR or the blue-haired unhinged SJW in your classroom. Enough is enough. The world does not end when you get called a bigot. If anything, the way it's used nowadays, if you get called a bigot, it's near compliment. It's almost synonymous with person who has a spine. When people call me a bigot, it usually means I'm just asking the right questions and saying what reasonable people believe to be true. Saying what you believe to be true is not hate speech, no matter how much offense someone takes to it. Asking what you genuinely are curious about is not hate speech, no matter how much offense someone takes to it. And if we cannot discern between genuine victims and professional victims who appropriate victimhood enabled by virtue signaling puppets or the overcompassionate, desperate for meaning, here is what happens. You can't ask, what is gender, in a public place without being moved on by the police for being likely to breach the peace and making people feel unsafe.
Can I ask, why is it that you have surrounded us like this instead of looking perhaps to the people who are aggressing us?
Your presence here is inciting potential violence.
Do you not think that maybe the people aggressing us are the ones that you should be looking to? Instead of the man with the microphone who says, hey, would anyone like to have an interview? You boys should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself. You in particular, and you as well, you boys for going along with it. All you've done is embolden professional victims. Removed from a public event for asking what is gender. So if that's not a sign of the times and the issue, I don't know what is.
You can't print signs asking pride for or against at office works without being told you are inciting hatred. You can't ask, what is a woman, without someone yelling at you, you're killing people, put your sign away. or someone trying to emotionally blackmail you by saying, I'm going to kill myself.
I think you're killing people. Actually, I don't think that you're killing people. I know that you're killing people.
By asking what is a man,
By
what is a woman?
asking what is a man and a woman. Why can't you take your sign off, pack up your stupid camera, and leave, rather than making a fuss?
I think it's an important question to ask.
You can't ask anything these antisocial tyrants don't want you thinking about, because they know on some level their ideas are indefensible and they want you to submit. They want you to swallow the blue pill of ignorance, the lie. You are undergoing compliance training, my friend, and every time you hold your tongue, the PC matrix closes in a little more. And again, this is bigger than you. You, whether you like it or not, are caretaker of the culture for future generations to come. Do not hold your tongue. Do not use politeness as an excuse for cowardice. Are you holding your tongue because you genuinely think politeness is the best way forward and that's what you should be doing? Or are you holding your tongue because you're afraid of the consequences if you were to say what you believe? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be afraid. You have reason to be. Karen is quite the monster, but you should be more afraid of your conscience. An age-old pattern that you'll see in mythology. You should be afraid of the tyrant, yes, but you should be more afraid of God and the voice gnawing at the back of your mind that says, speak up. The hero of your story doesn't hold his or her tongue in fear. He or she does what they know to be right, even when they are afraid. So speak your mind forthrightly. Do not apologize for it. And know that you have what it takes to deal with the consequences. You will figure it out. So when a male, penis-having, dress-wearing narcissist who says his pronouns are she, her, and thinks himself entitled to stripping naked and whipping his dick out in front of your mother in the same change room, you well and truly should consider saying a firm and timely, no sir, you are a he, him. And no, that ought not be deemed illegal hate speech. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Godspeed.